And we are live. Welcome everyone to JWC Livestream. This is Story Autopsy, JWC Story Autopsy with Ricky and Tom. I'm Ricky.
I'm Tom.
Nice to meet everyone. And having a little technical difficulties there, folks. Anyway, so we did this last week too. We're going to try to do it as often as possible. I think over the next 2 weeks, Tom, you're going to be going on vacation, right?
Right.
Yeah, well, I know what's going on there, and I'm looking forward to talking with you about that. I know you have your special project that you do only on vacations.
Right.
What you've dubbed your Florida novel. Yeah,
Right.
see, over the years, JWC as an active community, and Tom and I have been in regular Zoom meetings, which we would invite you to participate in. On Tuesdays, from 6 to 8, it's Eastern time. We gather to do the standard, or what we call the classic JWC meeting, which is just pure creative obsession. We talk about what we're writing, we read. We do reads. And reads are something that's really cool. All the great masters read their stuff aloud. And it helps refine your voice. And I've heard, again, getting back to the point, I've heard it from Tom, how you go to Florida. What is it? Almost every year you go?
Every year, Memorial Day week.
Yeah,
Roughly.
and so the next 2 weeks we're not going to be doing the live stream because he's going to be out of state. And you're working on your Florida novel. What's that about, roughly, if you could tell us?
It's called Blood on the Sand.
Mm-hmm.
I call it a not so cozy murder mystery. It's about a cookbook author from New Jersey who inherits a beachfront condo from his uncle, and he's deathly afraid of thunderstorms. So he's settling in and doesn't realize one night there's a new moon and a thunderstorm kicks in his area, and he's really scared, but he hears someone scream. He peers out of his blinds and he sees this big guy that he saw earlier in the this overweight guy stumbling on the beach, falling onto some beach chairs, and then all of a sudden this darkness covers him and he's gone.
Oh no!
And so the hero, his name is Jake. He says, "What should I do?" He goes, "I shouldn't got there." So he goes out into the storm, and with his camera, his phone flashlight, and he walks through the air and he sees just scuffle. The air is all scuffled and chairs are knocked over, and he finds a patch of blood on the sand between two chairs.
There's the blood. There's the sand. Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. And he has a little Ziploc bag with him. And he had some nuts in or whatever, and he scoops up some of the sand, bloody sand, and he puts it in the bag. But it's also he finds a finger with a ring on it. And he says, "Oh boy, so that it really did happen. There was somebody." So he takes the finger, he puts the blood and the finger in the freezer, and he comes back down. He comes back to the house and he tries to calm down. And basically, he goes on he tries to find out who it is and why, what came out of the ocean to drag this guy to his death, to take him away. And he finds a pattern that whenever there's a new moon and a thunderstorm at the same time, something comes out of the water and takes people off the beach. And somewhere between Daytona and North Miami, if this thing operates, and just drifts along with the seasons. And he finds over 100 people in the past 40 years have disappeared. So it becomes an obsession. He goes to little towns along the way, Boca Raton and etc. All these places, and he goes to the library and he comes up with a list of deaths and a pattern of when the thing goes north and when the thing goes south. And he finds out that the pattern always holds: the storm and the new moon. And
Mm.
so, you know,
That
where
that
in the world that came
is
from,
yeah.
you
Well,
know.
and that's the thing. Uh, what you're talking about, it sounds to me like it's a cryptid. What they call, um, you know, I mean, it's cryptozoology, but in this particular case, it's a wider pantheon that embraces the notion that there are things, perhaps inhuman things, that roam the earth. Anybody that's listened to Coast has probably heard this type of thing. And it's one thing
Hmm.
to have an interest in that kind of paradigm when you're just a consumer, but if you're a creative, it's imperative to know alternate paradigms for the sake of your fiction, to embrace
Right.
what's possible. And that, hold on one second, that gets us to our point. Um, this episode that we're focusing on is about alternate paradigms in fiction. And I'm going to aim specifically for the Hollow Earth. Now, what were you going to say, Tom? I'm sorry, man.
Believe it or not, it came basically one night where I was sitting in our we have a timeshare down there, and it was a big storm, and I'm watching the wind blow, and there was no moon. And I
Yeah.
said, what if something was out there? And this whole idea just hit me. And I found out later on that there is actually a creature um, that lives in the Bahamas called the
Yeah.
Luska. That's what I think. That's what this is. It's one of these Luska strayed, a little farther west, and wound up in off the coast of Florida. And
Well,
it's
there are people who think they've seen all kinds of stuff. And what I always say is, even in our own paradigm, which is chiefly mysterious, materialism covers a certain part, but it refuses to acknowledge certain things. So in fiction, if you're going to embrace mystery and the unknown, you got to go a little bit beyond that. I'm not saying that this is all ghosts and stuff. It could just be another creature. The ocean's really big, Tom. It's really big.
we don't
The
know what's
the
out
earth,
there.
yeah, the Earth is really big. The universe is huge. I mean, we're learning new stuff every day. They photographed the black hole recently, or I don't want to say
Oh, sure.
photographed it. I think it was some kind of deep field scan or something. And
Mm-hmm.
and the idea is there could be mysterious things, as our old friend Lovecraft suggested, that came from the stars.
Right. So
So
a
go
cool
ahead.
thing. The very last victim of this mysterious creature is Emily Breck.
Whoa, there's now
Yeah.
there's a name for you. I was gonna go to that next. I mean, we because
Okay.
we had to excuse ourselves about missing the next 2 weeks. But you're on vacation. It's vacation. What are you gonna do? But
Right.
getting back to serious work, it boils down to, where are you with Emily? I know you were working on some diary entries that you were going
Right.
to put
So
in.
yeah, my most recent major work or whatever is the Curious Journey of Emily Breck.
Mm,
Uh, Really quick, it's a story about a woman who dies 7 times, and every time she dies, she's a little more improved, and she moves to a different new community to try to
great
restart,
story. Great
to
story.
escape whatever is after her, killing her.
Yeah.
And so the book is done. In the morning I have been writing diary entries for in between deaths, or yeah, when she gets to a new place. Um, she gets
Mm-hmm.
set up. She goes, "I can't believe I'm dead again," and et cetera, et cetera. And it's basically trying to get into her head a little bit as she adjusts to a new life, each new life. And after a while, she's just, yeah, I died again, and I'm in a different place, and she just was resigned to the fact that she's going to keep dying. And right now I am the diary entries. I'm trying to go in chronological order. Right, the diary entries are in Emily 5. Um, where she's in St. Augustine
Oh, yeah, yeah.
with the ghost.
Yeah, that
And
is. I mean, it's fantastic. Each chapter of that story, one after the other, is very picturesque, and it really, really draws you in. The whole concept of paranormal fiction or paranormal fantasy. That's what I've been working on with Nidhogg. Nidhogg's taken an incredible turn lately. Um, let's just say, I mean, our main character, she's a strong female. She's an anti-hero, though. She's a
Hmm.
hybrid from an extraterrestrial breeding program. And they're trying to breed to have a human looking telepath of sufficient strength so that the masters who live in the hollow earth in this story, they have to be able to ride in or vehicles, sentient vehicles, in order to deal with the surface because it's too bright and it's too terrible up here for them. But the latest thing that occurred to me is she goes to this place called the Fortress of Dearth, and she has to do a hit job in that place. When everything is said and done, she's trying to get out of there, and she finds this containment unit. And inside is this extra dimensional being, a hyperdimensional being, if you will, made of
Hmm.
this pure oneness energy. Um, and there's a little bit potential for romance and strangeness, a little bit potential for a next level. And you know her story, what happened to her, the bad luck she had. She fell in love with someone who couldn't love her back. That's a terrible place to find yourself in as far as fate's concerned. So maybe this is karma kind of giving her one. I don't know. It'll happen in the sequel maybe, but right now it's just there's interesting stuff going on, and I'm having a blast. I only have 6,000 words of that one left, Tom.
Wow.
Um, how many more entries do you have? Do you think?
For Emily,
Yeah,
I'm thinking when she gets to life number 7, she's not going to have time to write in a diary because
yeah.
this is the her last stop, and she hits the ground running with life number 7. So
She's
I'll have her.
super busy
Oh
by that
yeah,
point. Yeah.
she's a state senator and
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, yeah. I remember.
all these things demanding her time.
Yep.
Um, so I'll finish off life number 5 where she's in St. Augustine, and then life number 6 when she's in Hollywood, which
Yeah.
is where Jake lives from Blood on the Sand.
Oh,
I have a
cool.
crossover. You read the book where Jake, she meets someone named Jake inside her place of business who's doing research on a new book. That's the hero of Blood on the Sand. So whether it's a good idea or not, I'm crossing these two time streams.
No, I think
uh,
it's a great idea. I did the same thing. You remember our corporate gothic collection? I have a
right.
song in there called "Songs of Agarte." I have a song. I have a story in there. Might as well be a song. So songs of Agarte is a short story about this guy who he goes on a little journey um, into a mine. It's supposed to be a haunted mine because he thinks there's treasure there. And he ends up, well, I'm not going to get into it, but let's just say there's a crossover character from Songs of Agarte to Nidhogg Chronicles. There's something,
ah,
yeah. I mean, that's why I'm saying I'm about you doing crossovers. The key is just continuity to make sure that you're
right.
getting it consistent. And that's what I did. I brought one character. I'm not going to say what it is. You should check out corporategothic.com if you guys are interested in the newer subgenre of horror that JWC is working on. I'm mentioning it only because of this crossover thing. So you don't want to get too much into the detail of how it crosses over. And one more quick question.
Sure.
How much more of that Florida novel do you have? Like, how many more years do you think you're
Boy,
gonna You know what I mean? Like, well, what's the word? What's the word budget?
Um, that I don't know. I have no idea where. I'm probably about 2/3 done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's and there's a I'm going to have to put it all together and see what I have.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So when I go down to Florida, I generally write 4 to 6 chapters in the week.
Mm.
Um,
And
so at
what's your
that
word?
pace, word
And
budget, no
for your
idea.
for your chapters, like what are your chapters average? No, listen, you're the
Um,
pants seat guy. That's fine. There's no wrong way. I
right.
used to be the same way myself. At most I had a chapter outline just to make it easier for me to write chapters because they're all in a row. Then you could just take notes, and
Mm-hmm.
it leads us to our question that we definitely got to ask before the end of the show. We're going to be getting back to your bride book.
Right.
I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about that now, before we move on to the
Well,
next segment. You know.
yeah. As far as the chapter lengths for Florida, about two
Yeah.
thousand words,
Mm-hmm.
roughly 2,500 words.
That's really. I mean, I do the same number, like all Nidhogg. It's been. I mean, up and down, but it's a minimum word budget of 2,000 because it is for me. Now, how about you? How did you come to 2,000? What was your reasoning behind it? Because mine is pacing. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, it's basically I fell into that was it was I started out with every chapter was like a day
Mm-hmm.
in his life as he's researching whatever's going on, and that's the 2,000 to 2,500 seems to fit pretty well. Um,
Agreed.
Sometimes a little short. If he'll have one chapter was like 1,800 words where he's gone to a few towns between Fort Lauderdale and Boca Raton. It's just basically a research chapter about what he found, and
Mm.
um, yeah, the police are trying to be not super cooperative because it's missing persons and they're old and they're sort of cold files to them because these people never turn up,
Yeah.
and so that they give them as much information as they can,
Well,
and then when he
they have the convenience. I don't want to say convenience, but they have the excuse of the sea. I mean, somebody could just get dragged out to sea. They're not going to necessarily associate it with a monster. You
right,
know,
people disappear all the time. They get drunk and they fall off a boat or whatever. Right,
and
they fall asleep
exactly.
on the beach
Yep.
at high tides coming in. Um, but he gets to Jupiter, Florida, and right the next town over, he meets a woman, a librarian,
Yeah.
who instantly falls for him, and
Hmm.
she's a little bit well off. She's just working in the library just to do something, so she starts helping him, and they both fall in love. That's a
Mm.
love story kind of jumps in at that point, and
Nice.
so he's
No.
got this thing he's got to try to now I have to protect her because I don't want this whatever this is to get her, and he thinks by the time he reaches her, he believes it's a sea monster, for want of a better way of putting it, and he doesn't want to tell her because he thought, oh, if I tell her it's a sea monster, she'll run off, and I don't want to lose her now. And she comes to that fact by on her own. She goes, this there could be something that comes out of the sea that take
Yeah.
these people. He goes, so that's kind of where they come together, and so
Well, speaking of monsters and romance, um, um, have you made any progress with the bride book?
oh, sure. Um,
You've been writing in your notebook, your first draft. How's that been going?
I have the maybe the first 25 pages, which is not bad.
Hmm.
Um, I just wrote the part where Dante. Well, the book I'm writing is called
Thank
the
you. Yeah.
Bride and Her Mates: A Tale of Two Monsters. It's the adventures of the Bride of Frankenstein after the end of the movie The Bride of Frankenstein, and basically what she's been doing uh, between then and today, which is an
Nice. Yeah.
awful lot of time to cover. But
Yep.
so there was a scene where she meets Dante, who's a homunculus that had been previously created by Dr. Frankenstein, and the homunculus says, "I will go tell the master that you're here." And she says, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." She goes, she just thinks he's gonna run back to the castle and come back, but he brings back the Frankenstein monster, and he comes pushing the door gets pushed open very slowly because she's blocked it with furniture, and he comes stumbling in and holds his arms out, and her first thought was, you know, I gotta get out of here. Second thought is I gotta rid of him. So she grabs a log out of the fire and she throws it at his arms, and he sets him on fire. He's doing all this crazy arms flame going all over the place. He's on
Yeah.
screaming, and she ducks out the back with she's got a backpack and an old coat, and she goes breaks out a window and she takes off. And
Fire bad.
fire bad, yeah.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
So she had been living in this hut for months. With she had like over 100 old leather bound volumes that she'd been reading,
Mm,
and everything from Martin Luther to the Bible to Don Quixote to science books,
class.
Paracelsus,
Mm.
what do you call it? Alchemy, all kinds of wild stuff. Whatever that was in that hut, and
And she's intelligent, right, Tom? She's absorbing
very
it.
yes. Something happens to her in the fall from the top of the castle tower that activates her photographic memory. She absorbs knowledge, and she basically learns how to survive by reading these various books. Robinson Crusoe, Mysterious Island, all these wild things that she learns survival techniques from some of these books. Maybe
Mm.
not Mysterious Island, that comes later, but books that were printed before 1800. These massive, thick books, and
So, well, yeah. I mean, and while we're on this, let's go to some questions. I had 10 questions that I wanted. I only got to five of them on last week's. You guys want to check
fire
out
away.
last? Yeah, you guys absolutely. You are our wonderful viewers will want to go check out last week's for the first five. Now we got the second five. This is concerning Tom's Bride book. And what's that project again, Tom? The title of it?
The Bride and Her Mate: A Tale of Two Monsters.
Thank you. And I know you're going to be doing that on Vela, right?
Amazon Villa, yeah. It's going to be a serialized novel. Each chapter 500-600 pages, maybe. Pages. 500-600 words,
That's cool. That's cool.
and maybe 1,000. That might be a good target, and
Flash.
just
The Flash
yeah.
budget's great. Very, very cool. I'm gonna be doing that on my next project, heavy duty, 1,000 word bulletins, I think. Um, but anyway, first question. What is your approach to historic fiction? And by that I mean period writing. Like your story with the bride takes place from what year to what year?
1797 to
Mm-hmm.
today.
Okay, that's a fantastic amount of time. That's more than a century. Now, how do you approach the concept of period writing? What is your process? By that, I mean like research, stylization, etc.
Mm.
And what are you taking? What's the tact you're taking with this project?
This was very different. I mean, I have a degree in history, so I have a little bit of idea of what went on during that time. But I've got into some history books, Wikipedia, uh, you know, uh, some history. I've gone through European history from 1797 to 1910,
And
and
you assemble that data. Would you say like in the year, whatever, this happened in this
right.
place? And are you're like, I know you're a pants eater, circling back to that, so you don't do a lot of outlining, but and it's not, I'm not picking on you. I told you there's no wrong way, but what I am wondering is, in this particular instance, do you outline the years, and
Yes.
how does that interlace with your chapter outline? And I know you don't have one, you just go, but I'm saying, even if it's just in your unconsciousness and you never write it down, do you give any thought to that? I'm interested in process, refinement of process,
Hmm.
and I'm
This
sure
one,
our
yeah.
audience is too.
This project is going to be is very very different. So, something I've never done before is
Hmm.
um,
Always
what
good.
I'm in the process of doing is finding a European map, and
Oh,
that way
good
I could plot
idea.
where she's going, where she
Mhm.
starts, and maybe get little tiny post-it notes, and say 1815 Napoleon and 1827 this, and just put post-it notes all over, and then get an idea where she might go. Uh, to avoid wars, if the Franco-Prussian War or the Crimean War or wherever, she might want to just stay away from warfare situations, at least
Yeah,
getting into them.
it's a
You
good
know,
idea if you want to self-preserve, to not be in more
yeah,
in war zones.
yeah. I mean,
Sure.
she doesn't want to be in at Waterloo the day before it happens.
Mhm.
Although
No.
that might be interesting. You know,
Well, if you feel like writing a big battle sequence with her there, and
mm,
the monsters loping through that, and what would that be like for Napoleon's men, if he were to suddenly come among them, and what would they do?
oh
And
yeah.
how powerful is he? Could he deal with musket balls flying at him, or
Yeah, in the movies he was shot a number of times and just kind of,
he doesn't
if not
notice?
brushing it off, just kind of just
Mhm.
you know absorbed it. So I'm going to postulate that the bride at least has very fast and very good uh, rejuvenation powers, sort of like, say, like Wolverine. She can heal super
Yeah,
fast,
sure, healing fast.
and she
Yeah.
retains her looks, which you can
Hmm.
see. Uh,
Yep,
she does
yep.
something about her hair later. She gets a better haircut,
Yeah, yeah.
and but she stays immortal exactly how she is at the be at in the movie,
Definitely.
and
Yeah.
the monster kind of does too. He just a little more travel has the mileage is really rough on him because
Yeah.
you know he's always being shot at and set on fire and etc.
Yeah, it gets old real quick, I'm sure. Um, it's interesting take using a map. Um,
Yeah, so that's what I'll do is I'll come up with a timeline
yeah.
of events, and
Hmm.
then see where she
Real,
could fit in,
yeah.
and then that's sort of like
Realistically, yeah.
yeah,
That's great.
that could turn into an interesting outline, or sort of a parallel list. Poland 1827. There was an
Yeah.
assassination, and right next to it, say the bride almost prevents the assassination. You know, I know in 1917 she's in Serbia, and she prevents the assassination of Duke Ferdinand the first time, and 3 months later they get him, and World War One starts. So
That's
uh,
right.
little things like that would be she
Uh, I'm a big
so
fan. I'm a big fan of maps, using maps. Um, check us out at joesridersclub.com blogs. I have blogs in there for secondary world maps, which is, this isn't a secondary world. This is a period map of Europe that you're going to be analyzing, and you're going to use it as a blueprint for continuity and feasibility of travel, whether or not her and the monster could go ambling over that amount of time, and
Hmm.
where are they journeying, and where would they end up. And if you trace the chapters back, you'll find out that they were here, they were there, and you could trace their steps. Um, and it makes your job easier, and it's fun because it helps to organize. I love cartography for narratives. That's a great way to do it, Tom, and it's a great
Hmm.
answer. The
I
the
mean, I might
next
I might throw her on the Orient Express in 1908, heading eastward, and she sees the Tunguska blast. Yeah, that might be cool to just throw it.
the
You
bright
know.
midnight, yeah, the bright midnight, absolutely, yeah. That's a great thing. So many possibilities that way. The next question is, what is your take on Gothic romance? And on Tuesday's meeting, and you sign up at joeswriters.club, and you come to our Zoom meeting on Tuesdays. Um, you had mentioned, I was talking about Anne Rice, and then you mentioned this other author who did the interview before she did the interview, right?
Fred Saberhagen wrote a book called The Dracula Tape. It was about
Yeah.
5 years before Interview with the Vampire, a minimum 5 years.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't say that she stole it, but because they're both very different books. But
Extremely. Yeah.
yeah, but what Saberhagen did was have Dracula actually tell his side of the story, what happened in the novel Dracula. And I happen to really think that his point of view. I agree that he was uh, he was mischaracterized. Let's call it that way. He basically paints Van Helsing as a monster, an incompetent idiot. That the reason why, let's see, was it Lucy? Lucy dies is that Van Helsing gives her a blood transfusion and doesn't check the blood type, and it poisons her, kills her that way. And so
So
that
he's like, I didn't do anything. It was.
says I may have bit her one time, but Van Helsing was the one ultimately that killed her. And by my bringing her back to life, it was only the right thing for me to do because she didn't deserve to die. Yeah, it was a very interesting idea.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, it you could see where one influenced the other. Um, so you would recommend him as far as Gothic romance. And what are you trying to achieve as far as that subgenre is concerned, if anything? Do you think the Gothic romance applies to this Bride book?
Oh yeah, I'm shooting for it to be a light gothic romance, not too heavy, not like Dracula. Um, I'll have some humor in there, like obviously with Dante popping up now and then, and her
Yeah.
and the bride's attempts every few years or whatever to rid herself of the monster. I think I'll just turn that into a running, so not kind of a running joke that you know how many
Hmm.
times do I have to set this guy on fire, or whatever before he stops coming in, and
Hmm.
and then after they do get together as a couple because she realizes around 1909 she realizes that he's kind of grown on her and that he doesn't mean her any harm. He just wants to be with her, and she says, "I think I could probably accept that." And he's not really too bad a guy, and his vocabulary is very small, but I can live with that. And
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So it's going to be around that. It's not a huge influence, but it may end up that way.
yeah. So as far as
That's.
gothic romance, I've the Gothic tradition, the Gothic books. I've read a lot of stuff in that. I guess you could call that Gothic time period. Um, the H.G. Wells and Jules Verne and whatever actually could be called Gothic adventures because it's in that time period, especially H.G. Wells. Um,
Yeah,
His the War of the Worlds and the Invisible Man, etc.
I
are very
love
heavily
that book.
gothic.
Love that book. That book, that was I read that back in middle school, and that book opened up to me the whole concept of invasion by an
Oh
extraterrestrial presence
yeah,
and a paradigm where something like that can actually exist. And just the what he does with that, when it emerges from the cylinder and when he's the main character's hiding in that cellar and all that, it's like I was riveted. I was just hanging out in the library. I
hmm.
was probably supposed to be like learning other things, but I was just doing a lot of reading and um but that it knocks your socks off the way that
Oh
whole thing
sure.
plays out.
And the amazing thing about that book is that when he wrote that, no one had ever written anything like that.
Mm.
Nobody. I mean, we're so jaded now with all, the alien invasion movies and aliens and monsters in the 1950s, and back then, that was the first time a really serious alien invasion had ever been put in fiction, and
Yeah.
I can imagine the shock of, that people went through that, and they ate it up. I mean, it was a big seller back then. And
Well,
again, that's
yeah,
another book that's never been out of print. It's
it's a
over 120
masterpiece.
years.
It's a masterpiece. It's immortal. It's timeless. There's no way it's going to go out of print because of the quality it has, how it transports you, and that's really the key when it comes to establishing a paradigm. You know, there's this thing with genre. Everybody talks about genre, but what a genre really it's a fictional paradigm. You're saying that in this story, X, Y, and Z is the case. Like he just establishes right away that there's aliens on another world, and you just in that story, that possibility is the focus, and it's all about that paradigm, the shift from what we hold to be true to the fictional paradigm in the story. And that's why I love those things: alien invasion, Hollow Earth,
Mm.
extraterrestrial contact. Like, or in your story, this Frankenstein, this doctor, this genius, somehow summons the power of life and death. He can control it, and he can give life to something that's been dead, and or however, whatever process you choose to use. If you're following
Mm.
this, if you're following that, and that leads me to my next question. But in closing with this, um, you know, establishing an alternate paradigm is better than writing in a genre. Like you could do the genre later. Establishing your own unique paradigm, I think, is the priority because it's reaching for originality, it's reaching for authenticity, and dare we say genius when you're trying to do your own thing, you know
Mm.
like a lot of your books are their own thing, Tom. Like Emily is hard to categorize.
Oh
um
yeah.
yeah, so the next question is, you were going to do Amazon Villa. I know we're kind of steering away here for a minute, but um, the first question is, because we got the answer. You're saying you want to do 500 to 1,000 word posts or chapters or whatever.
Say close to 1,000 words, right?
Yeah. Now, are you going to write the whole book before you start posting it, or are you going to write
I'd
a
like to. I
chapter
think
a
that would be best for for the customers, for the subscribers to know. You know, for me, I would try to assure them when I got I have the entire thing done. There are Vela writers, I'm sure, out there that are two chapters ahead of what they've published, which is pretty cool because you've got to be really creative to keep it coming out. But
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to have it be done, um, and pretty well polished before I put chapter one out, because I don't know if what I write 6 months from now, I'll say, oh boy, I've got to go back and add that to the first two chapters. That always happens with me. Is that there's always a
Yeah, that's how it
you got to
is.
fix the
Hmm.
early stuff, and
Yeah,
you know.
definitely.
So, and I've also, as far as the Frankenstein, I've read enough sequels um, to the novel to know where not to tread. That I've done, so that I don't duplicate what other people have done. There's so many good sequels out there.
And
Um,
and and that brings me to the next question, which is character design. What is your focus? Like, I know it's still taking shape. I know we already kind of went over this on Tuesday, but
mhm.
when you consult your muse, like your inspiration, which way are you leaning? Are you going to be reaching more into, because I know the bride is she's not, I don't think she's a character in the original novel.
Not alive. She's
Yeah, that's
the
what I
the
mean.
doctor creates is about to create a mate for her when he has second thoughts and he destroys the
Hmm.
female, and the monster sees him do that and doesn't go over well.
No, it's not going to go over well, because
So
he was horrified about the possibility of Earth overrun with a second race of monsters, a species
right,
that he helped bring about, and the terror of it led him to that act. You know? Yeah,
that's true. Yep. For
yeah.
whether it would ever have happened, you know, we'll leave that up to the reader's imagination.
Could you
So,
imagine? Could you imagine a world of like Frankensteinian monsters like that are just deathless? Like, where would they live? How would they interact? Would they pay
oh
taxes? Would they
yeah.
would they demand their own country? Or what would the nature be of non-living citizenship or alternate life form, however you would call it? I
Well,
mean,
would they be? I mean, if she's fully functional and
hmm.
she could have kids, they would be alive. Um, Weird. There's a on the television show Supernatural, one of the later episodes, season 10 or 11. Uh, the two brothers run up
Hmm.
against a family called the Steins,
Oh
and they
no.
don't realize that that basically it's the Frankenstein monster family that they've been it's whatever happened was supposed to happen in the novel did happen in this episode, is that they've been creating each other over the centuries, and they're all the whole family is just made up of bits and pieces of other people, and it was it was a lighter episode, obviously, because it wasn't, but it was really interesting when you realize that, oh, you don't put when they said, oh, this is Mr. Stein, it doesn't
Hmm.
hit you till later on that you know it becomes really obvious that it's Frankenstein. That was so good. Anyway, um,
I had friends who swore by that show, but I heard by the later seasons it was starting to get a little washed out. I mean, what do you think of it? How much of it did you watch?
we got to see season 12 and lost track of it, so we have about 2.5 seasons to to finish all 15 seasons. We love the heck out of it. I mean, it's incredible.
Hmm.
Very inspiring.
Yeah,
Very
I'm
very
sure.
inspiring.
I've been told that that's the case. It's one of those things that just I was never able to. 'Cause I do a lot of YouTubing, a lot of writing, and I work a lot. But if I really wanted to see it by now, I mean, they've been telling me about it forever.
Oh yeah,
Um,
the first season's very very interesting because they do a lot of urban legends, which is
yeah,
pretty cool.
urban legends are great, man. For
So
fiction.
the Phantom Hitchhiker and the
Hmm.
Ghost in the Lake that drowns people, all this wild stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I love a good urban legend and horror. So and last question. Are you worried about the Universal Films copyright at all? And how does that influence your character design?
Wow. Um, I'm going to stick with essentially designed for the monster is the one from the book, which anybody could use, right?
Mhm.
Um, and as far as the bride, she is who she is. I'm going to have, yeah, obviously the hair's got to go. Um, and she cuts her hair to a reasonable length, a bob or whatever. And
Mhm.
um, like I said, I'm doing about 25% of the book is based on the first two films, and the rest of it is based on the novel. So there's like a conglomeration. I'm I'll cross that bridge when they get to it. If Universal contacts me and says you got to change things a little bit, I will. But
Oh, we'll have to
other
look in. We'll have to look into it, Tom. We'll
yeah,
have to do a
other
little.
writers have written books about the Bride of Frankenstein, who basically only was in a single film. Um, so
Mhm.
technically, Universal has can say what they want. They could stop people from getting too close. But
Mhm.
I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to write it
Well,
anyway.
yeah, well, first of all, it's you need to write it because the voice is there and the muse is there. And I've listened to what you've read so far. Maybe when you come back from vacation, you'll have more, and then we could do a couple reads just to give people. I'm not saying left and right, just a little taste because I know you want to write it, and it's going to be first drafty anyway. But we're going to be doing reads, folks. We're going to get some stuff in order because reading like we do on Tuesdays meetings, or it's a very very cool thing. Um, and I got some stuff I could probably share that I've been working on. So lastly, now that we got those questions out of the way, and I think it's very very informative for anyone who's approaching historic fiction or gothic romance or any of the things this story promises. These questions are going to be helpful for them to get their process in order. But we were talking about paradigms, alternate paradigms. That's our main focus, and mine in particular that I love, that I've been working on lately with Nidhogg Chronicles is the Hollow Earth paradigm. The concept that the inner and outer core are hollow with open space and hanging oceans, or they're sphere within sphere within sphere, like some of the old timers wrote about. There are people who had momentum behind the concept of exploring the inner earth, and it goes back to tales like this. I have a book that I'm reading called Vril, The Power of the Coming Race. And its
Hmm.
first edition was in 1871. I think
Is that
it's
by Litton?
yes, it
By
is.
yeah. Hmm.
Edward Linton. And what this book does is there's these miners. It starts with these miners, and one of them is kind of like going down this new stope, and he breaks through to this area, and he notices that it's unnaturally illuminated. So they haul him back up out of it, and he's horror stricken, like he just saw a ghost. And the guy, he doesn't want to talk about it, so they're at the fire later that night, and they ply him with some I think it's whiskey, um, and eventually he calms down enough, and he's like, "I saw this light, and it just shouldn't have been no light there. It was nothing. It's deep in a cave. It should have been nothing but darkness." And he said it was bright, and he didn't know what to make of it. He thought he heard voices. So the guy's like, "Well, there's only one thing for it. We're gonna have to go down and investigate this."
Hmm.
Um, so he goes with him, presumably, and they run into these, Vrilheimers. I forget what they're called, but they're these people who live in the crust of the earth, and they have special powers. They're not merely human. Vril, which is, that's an esoteric concept, the concept of Vril. It moves into occult principles, which makes it perfectly accessible if you're writing occult or paranormal fiction. It would be something to consider. Like if you do live in the middle in the hollow earth, what are you like? Or you gotta be having a different diet. You gotta be living in a different strata of life. And in this case, they have special powers. So in this particular case, we're trying to do a monster. This isn't in this Vril book, not to my knowledge, but you were talking about this monster. Where did you get what book is it that you were reading where it talks about this giant worm that lives in the earth?
But
Um,
yeah, it was. Let me see real
Min
quick. There's a gentleman
Minho.
named it's Minhacao.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a
the one.
giant Brazilian, a 65 to 100-foot long uh, worm, if you will, that lives in Brazil. Perfect place for a giant worm to live. It's armor plated. It drills through the earth. It eats. It loves horses and cattle. It's one of its favorite things to eat.
Whoa.
Uh, there is a number of sightings of it by German. See, were the German scientists living in the area in the 1870s uh, that were introduced to it by some of the natives, and they said if you're real quiet, one will go by, and they saw this thing tunneling through, and the head broke through and looked around, and he says, "Do not move, or it will eat you." And
It's like Dune,
so
man, except smaller, but
yeah,
it's like, so wait a minute now. You read this. Now, this isn't a cryptid book. This
yes,
isn't this. Yeah. So this, some German scientist back in the day, he ran into what he thought was this, and they were attributing it to missing cattle and livestock. Did it eat
hmm.
people? Was there ever anyone who they thought was taken away by it and devoured? Or
It didn't really say, but quite probably the natives, like I said, natives knew how to deal with it. They said it won't get you if you stand absolutely still, which reminds
Mhm.
me of, remember in Jurassic Park with the Tyrannosaurus.
Yeah,
So maybe there was.
and obviously in Dune, like I was just saying, the sandworm of Arrakis responds to sound, so it's a similar vibe.
Ah.
Yeah. So
So
and
there's there's that I've always been interested in things living under the desert. I think that if you've heard of the Mongolian death worm, there's Africa. There's a thing called the Indus worm, which is a huge snake-like worm that lives in the Congo or near the Congo. Great Britain has their worms, WE, which are basically wingless dragons. So there's
mhm.
been a lot of there are a lot of tales of huge worm-like creatures that live under the ground.
So
And Tremors is a if you
yeah,
saw the movie
yeah.
Tremors, it's that plays on that whole idea.
Right on, right on. Yeah, I remember. It's been a while since I've seen those flicks, but they're classic. Uh, yeah. So the point is, it's a big world, and you don't know what's under there. I'm not saying I know there's a hollow earth. I'm saying for your fiction, explore other paradigms, just to see
Hmm.
what that exploration brings in the way of inspiration. I said many times, inspiration is the highest coin in the realm, and you shouldn't shut yourself off. I'm not suggesting you then believe that that's the case, that there's a hollow earth. I'm saying read about it, find out about it, especially if you're shopping for material, if you're looking to get inspired. You don't know when the muse is going to hit you with a muse flash.
Hmm.
And just
Sure.
reading about this stuff is very interesting.
As a matter of fact, I was familiar with Vril, the concept of Vril, and
Hmm.
one of the kingdoms in Shirella's kingdom,
Oh.
in Varema, is called Vrilor, and
Oh.
all the people that live there draw power from the earth.
Yeah.
Their life force from the earth, which is kind of what Vril is a little bit like.
Mm.
It's like a life force or a force from energy from within the earth or whatever. So I thought that would
There's
be
all
pretty cool. If people get it, they get it. If not, then it's just a little kingdom tucked away. you
no.
know,
That makes sense to me, and I love Varema. We're gonna have to eventually turn our attention to that a little bit more, and ask where that is with the rewrites and stuff.
hmm,
Vril is a mysterious concept, and it's has a bunch of different orthodoxies that take it.
right.
It's some people say it's tantra, some people say that it's an element like an element like orgon or whatever, where like if you're exposed to it, it changes you. Some people think it's it has to do with that Maria Orsic, that witch, who was
Sure.
associated with ufology and stuff. I have a lot of very interesting material on her.
And it was
um,
also the highest ranking Nazis were members of the Vril Society, which you
that's
must know of, right? I mean,
Yes,
so
that is
boy,
true.
it's
Yeah,
got a lot
well,
of fingers and a lot of pies.
it goes back into the esoteric folklore of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Germany and ultimately Eastern Europe. It's very, very
Hmm.
old. They were trying to appropriate it for their own propaganda. And Maria Orsic, in her writing, she condemned that. She wasn't a Nazi, but she was a German. Um, what it boils down to is when you harness this intrigue and you go back and you try to investigate it, you're bound to come up with ideas. So it's just alternate paradigms. It's really good to explore them. Now we're about to wrap this up, folks. It's been another fantastic live stream. Hopefully you get to see it. Tom, why don't you do your plug for your collection before we
I
go?
have a collection of short stories on Amazon. It's available on Kindle, paperback, and hardcover. It's called Dwellers in the Shadows. It's a
Yep.
bunch of spooky stories that you should enjoy. So,
Right on, right on. And I'm selling Babbletron, After the Fire. I'm gonna try to put it in our um, on our social media. I'll try to get it on Facebook and Twitter, at least. Babbletron After the Fire is a dystopian cyberpunk book. It's a novella. People have been reading it. They got some reviews. Nobody's written a review for it yet, but it's gotten 5 stars mostly from those people who have been checking it out. And it was very satisfying to write. So that's Amazon.com. Check it out for KDP and Kindle. And definitely let me know what you think. Tom, this has been great. Is there anything else you want to plug? Did you talk about the Cli-Fi thing? You want to drop that, or you didn't want to not?
now it's turning out to be a dud.
Okay. Okay.
Almost
Well,
done with it. So,
I'm sorry to hear that. Truly.
yeah.
But listen, you don't let your vacation be a dud. Go and get some fun in the sun and get some words thrown down. And I want to hear all about it when you come back.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
All right.
we'll do our Tuesday read through of new chapters, and
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
so.
All right, Tom. Thanks a lot, and thanks everyone for checking us out. And we're gonna see you next time. All right.
Okay, sounds good.